Hello and welcome to our complimentary webinar, which is brought to you today in partnership with VIS Global, which is entitled Why Intelligent Automation is a Must-Have for Organisations. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of today's special guests, we hope to spark your interest and engage you in the conversation, as well as provide you some ideas to take back to your respective businesses. To round off the session, we'll be having a Q&A at the end of the webinar. I'm Fiona Keogh, CEO of Auscontact, and your moderator for today. While we're waiting for everyone to join us, let's use the time to quickly run through some housekeeping with you. Remember to interact with us today to maximise the benefit, and as you know, there's no need to take too many notes because we'll be providing you with a recording of the webinar. To interact with us, please use the Q&A button on the control panel. You can ask questions and make comments from time to time for our speakers and or myself. Remember, we'll be having a full Q&A at the end of the session. So please type as you go along, else you might forget what you want to ask. If you're listening through headphones or speakers and experience any issues with your internet connection, please note that on the control panel, you can click the raise hand button and the Auscontact team will rush to your aid, or you can revert to your confirmation email with the link to the webinar, and all of the relevant phone numbers and access codes will be available. With that, I'm really happy to welcome our speakers today. We have three speakers: Alex Koshi, Senior Director, Program Lead Asia at Automation Anywhere; David Rieperson, Digital Program Lead at Maribyrnong City Council; and Vikal Furia, Director at VIS Global. So before we hear from the team, let's ask a question. So Jess, if you wouldn't mind launching the poll. So the question for today is, where is your organisation on the automation journey now? Is it evaluating the technology, planning and experimenting, doing a pilot, scaling up the RPA setup, or you haven't begun as yet? So we're going to leave the poll open for a little while. So with that, I'm very pleased to hand over to Vikal. Vikal, welcome.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you so much for that. And first of all, thank you everyone for making the time. I hope everyone is keeping well given the crisis we are in for certain regions. So I hope everyone in the families are keeping well. All right, so firstly, we'd like to quickly give you a view about VIS. VIS, we are basically all about delivering outcomes. And the VIS journey basically is around being versatile, innovation-driven, and service-oriented. That's what we stand for. You have a quick view of who we are. We were established in 2011 overseas in India, started from there, and since then have grown to about 9 countries as of today, over 500 people, and we manage more than 50,000 interactions. What do we do? 3 core areas that we cover: customer experience, which basically is the key topic of today, is around contact centers and customer experience. So we cover a plethora of solutions around the customer experience, anything that touches customers. Second is the employee experience, which covers UC or unified communication, collaboration tools, networks, security, and anything that helps the employees deliver a better experience. And the most important and the most interesting part of today's conversation is the automation piece. So we cover a lot of technologies around automation, and we'll go through a few of those. Now, how do we do that? Is in 3 parts. We have a consulting division, which basically starts from a business consulting, process consulting, technology consulting, and goes on into implementations of project delivery, wherein it's sourcing of products, licenses, what have you, and implementing them, then going into a fully managed service with that. So the idea is an end-to-end solution provider is what we would like to call ourselves. Acknowledging the partnerships that we have, which has basically fueled us to deliver these sort of solutions for our customers. So Automation Anywhere, Avaya, NICE, Oracle, Juniper, these are some of our key partners. Obviously, there's another list of them. And from a global presence, we are, as I said, in 9 countries. More to the context for this webinar, we are in Australia and New Zealand in 4 cities across the 2 countries here. From an Asia point of view, India, Sri Lanka, Singapore, Philippines, the Middle East, and Malaysia. And from a European continent, we are in the UK at the moment. So pertaining to automation, there are a lot of things that are happening around in the automation world, and more around the contact center applicability of this. We sort of cover these sort of 6 areas. So these are the 6 sort of solutions that from a VIS point of view that we look at and we cover. Starting with the first one, which is the visual IVR or the conversational AI stuff. We have obviously all been looking and playing with these sort of technologies if not in the corporate world, at home. So, your Google Alexa of the world, your Google Home, Alexa, Amazon Alexa, any of those sort of tools, we basically are using that to be more natural in the way we converse, and we are bringing those technologies into the customer experience for it so that we can deliver a much more seamless outcome. Chatbots or virtual assistants, these have become more and more prominent in the current circumstance, given the limitations we have with the COVID situation, where people are not able to be available as easily as they used to be, and we still want to deliver an exceptional customer experience. So these have become quite vital, and we cover those sort of technologies. Cognitive analytics around information that we gather. So a lot of the conversations that we get captured from the contact center point of view, whether you are a BPO, whether you are a captive contact center, we record calls, we have messages, we have emails, we have a lot of context that we capture. We are working on tools, or we have solutions which have tools which get all of that information out from what your customers are saying, what are the pain points, what are the good things they're liking about what you're doing, or what are some things that they're actually not liking and could be red flags. So capturing that information and making more lucrative and informative for what you're doing is what we do. Omnichannel, again, I think it's a very common term these days, which is a lot of people are on that journey to sort of enable an omnichannel view of the customer so that we could have a full view of what customers are doing. But thought we'll mention that because there are still a lot of people who are trying to come on that journey and see how that is done. The next one, which is relatively new, is the automated quality management. So back in the days, used to be a team of quality managers or QA team that used to be able to do 5%, 10%, 15% of quality assurance and quality checks on conversation or interactions. With the tools that we have from an AI and the robotics perspective, we are able to sort of take that 10, 15% to more of 100%, get a better view of what is happening with the individual agents, with the individual performances, and have a more fruitful outcome and fruitful discussion to improve the experience there. And last not the least, and the most important topic for today is around the process automation and the intelligent automation trends. So without getting too much into this, I will leave it to Alex to sort of take us into that. But that's the wider topic for today. So in a nutshell, these are the sort of areas we cover from a VIS perspective. And if there is any questions around that, we'd love to take that. Fiona?
Fantastic. Thanks, Vikal. Let's have a look at the results of the poll. And I think we can see that the most popular thing that's going on, and certainly the first step on the journey, is evaluating the technology. I don't know, Alex or Vikal, did you want to comment on what you're seeing? Alex, what do you think?
Yes, Fiona, let me take that. Oh, this is not typically the way that we have seen it in other regions. We usually have it lower down the quadrant, which is evaluating technology and planning. This shows the maturity of the market. It shows the inclination of the market, and I actually expected that it will be higher on the top end, which is good. So now I can actually focus more on that side of the business than the initial, but I will still keep a little bit. This is great. Lovely.
Fantastic. Well, why don't we move forward? Over to you, Alex.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Fiona, and thank you, Vikal, for handing this over to me. So, from the report that we saw, it is important to understand that there are about 30% of the people that are still evaluating. So I will try to give a little bit of importance to that portion so that you understand what is IPA, which is Intelligent Process Automation, RPA, which is Robotic Process Automation, non-intelligent form of the IPA, and then take you through of how it is a must-have for contact centers. So without much ado, let me start. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, depending on the region or the place where that you are from. I saw that some of the people could be from different place other than New Zealand also, and Australia, but welcome to you. Now you have in front of you a picture, and I believe most of you would be able to relate to this. I know that in Australia, basketball might not be the greatest ones, but who doesn't know Jordan, right? So this is from the game of 1998. This is from game number 6 of the NBA Finals. Many of you might have seen the Netflix edition of The Last Dance, which depicts the journey of Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. What's important is there is 6.6 seconds on that time board. At this time, the score reads Chicago Bulls 85, Utah Jazz at 86. Chicago Bulls is down 1 point. And I believe you all know the game's rules of the game. This shot, if it does go through, it's 2 points. Michael Jordan from the Bulls has taken the shot. Now, how critical is this shot halfway through? Actually, it's a pivotal point for Michael. Why? This would be his 6th championship, and all rests on what happens next. This picture, which eventually will be called the last shot, all of us know how it ends, right? He makes it, wins it for the Bulls and himself. An epic moment. Honestly, it might be a surprise for you too, but let me tell you in this manner, it's not just pivotal point for Jordan. Now, you may ask, who else? Fernando Medina. A few of you might even know him. He's a photographer who gets the credit for capturing this epic moment to cherish forever. He, in his own words, once said, "Who could foresee a poor refugee from Cuba would end up with the opportunity of photographing Michael Jordan taking his last shot as a Bull to win the 1998 NBA Finals and make good of that opportunity." Fernando Medina's opportunity. Let's keep that word opportunity in our minds. That's a pivotal point. Medina also had to get the exact timing, which is mid-bay of the ball, with the time board and the audience in the frame. If that wasn't enough, each have to be in focus. Let me tell you how difficult it is. In fact, there are 3 pictures of this exact very moment. One of it was out of focus. The other was not the right angle or the frame. Let's think about what was the technology available to us or the photographer compared to now. This is exactly why we are here, trying to get a grasp on the automation technology set that is available to us, especially for our frontliners, to ensure that they're able to take the best shot and never miss an opportunity. With that, let's try and understand how relevant is automation. If you look at how personal digital productivity drivers have developed over time, the first quantum leap was taken with personal computers. I believe everyone today who works on digital workload has to have a personal computer, maybe more, right? Then came mobile phones and smartphones. Skyrocketed the productivity of people. You could reach anyone, anywhere, anytime. IPA, or Intelligent Process Automation, is forecasted to be the next. The question is, what is Intelligent Process Automation? In simple words, it's automation so that every employee is at its best with their jobs. Now let's answer why it's relevant and how we go about doing it. Automation technologies is nothing new. It's been there for 20 years plus, but there still exists a lot of manual processes. So let me try and ask a question, but even answer it. Why? A typical traditional process of automating a system or digital system goes by putting in a programmer and getting him to automate it. This satisfies about 20% of the systems that we work on. To be able to do the remaining, can we have everyone else become a programmer? The actual answer is no, right? Since it's important to understand that with time, increase of IT system adoption, there is a complexity increase. The systems that were used as mainframes on the old age oracles are no more the same today. Today, the complexity of those systems are very high, and hence the gap of what could be automated still remains, especially when we want to have the best of the breed systems. So what do? We put manual labor onto it. And one way, this was also the genesis of the BPOs, right? In fact, our organization, Automation Anywhere, have 500 plus systems within our organization. Workday connected to SFDC, Oracles, etc. You name it, we have many of them. So how do we mitigate this? To mitigate this, we have IPA, which actually does a simple thing. It simulates the human behavior with technology. Now let's try and understand this a little bit more further, okay? When human beings work, it revolves around doing certain things, right? It does about doing certain tasks, or thinking about those tasks, or analyzing those tasks, and of course have coffee. You know, we were discussing about coffee a little while back, but I said that some of you might be thinking about beer. Anyway, RPA, or Robotic Process Automation, does those structured tasks, which is the do portion of the task. Cognitive and analytics, which are AI-driven technologies, think and analyze, which brought together with RPA makes Intelligent Process Automation. And that's what we in Automation Anywhere call as the digital workforce. Now, why do we employ these digital workforce? You can all read this from the list below. In fact, the point that I want to take you through is that most of the digital native companies like the Uber, Airbnb, Amazon are all driving digital transformation using digital workforce from Automation Anywhere. Now that we know the relevance of what automation is and how it benefits, let's get to the real meat of the session, okay? We were talking about pivotal point. Let's take a closer look at what happens in a customer service or a technical service interaction. This could be any channel, right? It could be emails, chats, etc. There are more than 15 different channels that a typical contact center today takes, right? But the challenges of all of them would be very similar. There are pivotal points during these interactions, right? They have to listen to the customer. They have to maneuver complex processes. At times, even work out offers for cross-sell, upsell. But all of these have to be adhering with the company rules and regulations and processes and policies. but the challenges would be similar with one or many of these together. In today's times, we have contact center organizations using applications like Citrix, their client systems, CRM, billing systems, or even custom-built BPM solutions, which is painstakingly built on the principles brought in by the best of the Lean, Six Sigma experts in your organizations. The reality is that processes and nuances keep changing. And so is the expectation of agility from the frontliners. What's most important is all of these needs to be done to deliver a great customer satisfaction, which is the bottom line, right? You have to be able to do, for the frontliners, you have to be able to do this with precision. They have to go through each one of the interactions, even systematically, one after another, till the time he makes it the perfect shot. Now, this is where intelligent process automation comes into play. What is it? It can be as simple as a virtual assistant that automates data entry, validation work across multiple systems. In fact, it can even guide on the next best action that needs to be taken by him. Invaluable for the agents who are actually new on the flow, reducing even the training times. It can be a collaboration tool to be able to work on exceptions. It can have machine learning models to help frontliners deliver exceptional customer service efficiently. In conjunction with IQBot, which is our native cognitive technology, which helps understand the unstructured data, you can make it even more powerful. Add to that the discovery bot, which makes finding automation opportunities as simple as creating a draft automation automatically. In simple words, you initiate a record button. The discovery bot records the steps that are taken by a human being. The system creates the bot automatically. What we have here is the industry's most comprehensive and advanced digital workforce platform, giving you access even over a pure cloud system. We are one among the only ones who have pure native cloud automation technology and access to one of the best marketplace for ready to deploy bots from our bot store. I will talk in detail about the productivity pack and details a little later. But now that you have a sense of these things, when do we onboard them for a contact center? And here is when I would like you to take a look at how a typical contact center's maturity model works for IPA. A typical contact center gets a query from customer. I'm keeping it very, very simple. It could be a product or a systemic defect, a service problem, etc. Then the interaction happens, any channel. The issue gets resolved, and you continue to have a very loyal customer. At early stages, there are self-service, sorry, let me just take a one step back. At early stages, there are these self-service automation that are brought in. The automation that provides data population on screen based on simple identifiers and key elements that you want to be able to use. I will be showing an actual demo relevant to this. Then at the next stage, you go into surface automation, where contact centers enhance and add a little bit more automation like fetching of customer journey information, say to predict what is next. Even in call automations like case creations. And finally, it can even help on after call work, which actually consumes a lot of time in some of the advanced processes that we have. But what is more important than that is to be able to create something called this team automation. Organizations are adding great bit of machine learning capabilities where exception handling between multiple systems could be able to be done, which brings in the capability to have automation between teams, manager and the individual, bot and the bot, etc. Eventually, implementing a perfect scenario, bringing in capabilities like IQBot for OCR data, which takes the OCR unstructured data and makes it structured. NLP, as Vikul also brought into, natural language processing for chat, and say speech analytics for voice, to enhance the input data that can be used by IPA. What IPA does is to be able to orchestrate all of these in being not just maybe proactive, but at least being preemptive. Now, let me share a quick flow of how this will look. There will be a kind of an omni-channel integration, which enables the automation system to fetch customer journey information. This could be from simple systems like an API connect or web services, any kind of mechanisms to be able to fetch those information. Then there will be this interactive form technology, which provides a single pane view of all essential customer data for the interaction. And I said, I will be showing this specific thing in the demo. We also have human-bot collaboration, which is built around team collaboration. That I mentioned that it could be collaboration between bots and humans and humans, or within bots and bots for providing exception handling capabilities, and also bring native automation technologies like doing automation natively on Salesforce, Excel, Google Sheet, Hangout, etc. It also gives you support to be able to build up next step guidance. To sum it all up, we also can use attended bots to be able to perform ACW tasks. All the steps that were taken by the individual or the frontliner to be able to address the task could be collated and put it together and provided back to the client whom they were interacting with, or feed it up into the system, SFDCs, etc. Right? Remember, automation are really the building blocks or a gateway into AI and ML utilization. Now, let's take a deep look, as I promised, into interactive forms. As I mentioned, it's in simple words to be able to take all the relevant information that the frontliner will require during that interaction, which can be built your own way for either each client of yours or even specific processes, and pushed by a simple mechanism onto the frontliners who are addressing those queries. It's as simple as drag and drop to make the form, linking the bots to all information in one place. In this case, you can pick up the mobile number from an IVR, the customer ID from, say, Invoicely, case order number from SAP, shipping status from, say, any external courier company website. How about having a shortcut to the most used actions from that single form, and maybe affect a hold order on Salesforce or the inventory system, all from one place. Now let's get into the demo for this one.
Customer service agents aren't productive, and operational efficiency is to blame. 80% of them say that they must access multiple screens to support customers. Why? Because customer data exists in multiple applications. When a customer calls in to get the status of his order and to complain why it's late, the front office agent looks up Salesforce to find his order number. He then looks in the Oracle database to see if his order is in stock and connects to FedEx to see if a shipping label has been created. That takes time the customer spends on hold while the rep goes through this process. These large wait times result in high dropped calls and low first call resolution rates, a big problem for the front office. Automation Anywhere changes that by enabling the rep to see all the data he needs on one screen, without having to toggle between applications, enabling the rep to spend that time on improving the customer experience. Let's walk through a demo of how we make this possible for our users. You see this form in front of you. Looks simple and easy to understand, not unlike the forms you fill in every day. Except this has a superpower. When the agent fills in the first and last name of the customer that just called in, the remaining form fills in automatically with the other info, so the agent can bring up in seconds all the information he needs for the customer on the phone. And it's a breeze to create. Users drag and drop elements into a form and easily connect a bot to each element. This allows the form to pull data from multiple systems and present it to the agent on one screen. And as always, data can be picked up from all sources: ERP systems, Microsoft applications, web-based applications, and unstructured sources like handwritten docs and emails via our award-winning IQBot solution. Now these forms work the other way as well. If the customer wants to update his address, the agent can type it in the form. A Submit button will update the customer's address in all applications connected to the form. Agents can use one form or multiple forms based on the task in front of them. Once created, these forms can be deployed to one agent or all agents immediately through A2019's role-based deployment. Anyone can create these forms. Automation Anywhere's focus has always been the business user, both in the front and back office. And these interactive forms technology is another step in that direction. All your customer data in one interactive form. Create your own with Automation Anywhere.
Excellent. I'm sure that you will be able to hear that and understand that well. What I want to take you to take away from this is that how simple it is to be able to create this. We don't require a programmer to be able to build any of these things. Now, as an organization, our aim in Automation Anywhere is to be able to make work more human, which means to take the robotic work out of you. For that, it is important for us to know what makes human beings human. There are three types of skills that human beings use. One is process-oriented skills. Next, quantitative reasoning skills. The process-oriented skills are actually these repetitive, structured tasks, right? The quantitative skills are numeric or logical in nature. And finally, cross-functional reasoning, which are related to creativity or social abilities of people. Each of this will eventually get affected at different ratios, right? It's nothing new. We have seen this happening during the first, second, third industrial revolutions. Automation in steel production, agriculture, electronics supported the respective industrial revolutions, giving rise to today's digital automation and helped humans move up the skill ladder, right? Here, I want you all to be able to listen to something very interesting. This is what is called the IAMS, computer cluster. It's one of the first computer cluster that created contemporary classical music, entirely computer generated. It's the first complete album created by a computer and recorded by human musicians, actually by the London Symphony. In fact, Tom Service, a British writer and a music journalist, said, in reference to this, "Hello World, I am a Hello World, often pose existential question about the integrity of music compositions. To blow holes in the fallacy that every note a human composer writes comes from a wellspring of emotions and deep thought, unique to our consciousness. The point that I want to bring in here is that certain percentage of the reasoning skill will also find coexistence between bots and humans. Very important for us in this generation to understand that the coexistence will happen. It is not that the cross-functional portion of it will completely be kept from humans. There will be certain percentage which will be done in conjunction with robotics. And that's why it's not about human or robotics. It's all about human and robotics. With that, I want to share some of the use cases of areas that you should explore, because when I saw that result from the report, it says that few of you are exploring, some of you are even wanting to scale. And in a typical pandemic scenario that we are all in, if I don't share some use case related to that, which we have extensively deployed, it won't be right. So let's get into this. We have a contact center having to deal with data privacy issue when work from home or work at home. The nomenclature depends on what you use, and don't have an efficient way to monitor this productivity or adherence of the people. What we did is as simple. We deployed interactive active forms and attached bots to fetch the PII information. So the bots are the ones that handle the PII information, not the humans. All on-screen sensitive information were automatically masked. I mean, you will be surprised that people can move windows, right? So the masking could even work dynamically. In fact, the agents or the frontliners received only non-PII information. All PII information validation also was done through the bots. Last, among all the multitude of use cases that we have deployed in contact centers around the world, a snapshot of which I wanted to show so that you can take these guides and be able to work on how do you want to scale, and even maybe work with us to be able to give you guidance into which are the areas where scaling is easier and how to be able to deploy it. I would like to somehow also highlight the use of bots for WFM RTA team. Now, I don't know if most of you will know the meaning of RTA. This is real-time adherence, which is a system to be able to see how and when each frontliner were scheduled to be there, and when and how they were actually present. So out of adherences from their schedule would typically be seen. This actually refreshes between 10 to 15 minutes according to how it is customized. And it's like watching Minority Report, right? You have 5 screens, there's an RT guy who is sitting and watching, and as soon as he sees a red alert, he goes, picks it up, the phone, and says to the manager, "Excuse me, your agents are out of adherence." And he will say, they will discuss what is the standard operating procedure for this, and he will say, okay, put someone else, etc. All of these are done by the RTA. But if you may, these are typically very structured processes. What we did is we used computer vision to be able to monitor these screens automatically. Now the bots take the action as per the protocol, whether it is escalation, or simple mechanisms to be able to schedule what to be done next. Imagine being able to take all these numerous RTS screens of, say, thousands of FTEs, and instead of doing a physical eyeballing of all of them, to be able to do it robotically. With that, I would like to thank each one of you to be able to listen to me, and I will hand it over to David. David, over to you.
Well, thanks again, Alex, and welcome everyone. My name is David Reep-Sarman. I work for Maribyrnong City Council. I'm a business analyst by nature, and my current role as a digital program lead is to identify manual and repetitive tasks. I take these tasks and what I do, I try to turn them into a digital process that will bring benefit to the end user. The presentation you'll hear from me today is just a quick journey of what we've achieved using the Automation Anywhere platform. We thought to ourselves, there has to be a better way, and in fact, we did find a better way. We found that not only did it save us time, but tasks were completed more accurately. We found that we could give some time back to the officers so they can concentrate on more complex tasks. So who are we and what are we? Where is Maribyrnong? So formed in 1994, we are located in Melbourne's inner west, only 6 kilometres from the CDB. We are connected, welcoming and multicultural, with almost half of our community born overseas from 135 countries, and we speak 85 languages. Maribyrnong is the smallest and most densely populated municipality in the metropolitan area. Our population is growing from over 85,000 in 2016 to almost 96,000 this year, and it is predicted to be more than 150,000 by the year 2041. Maribyrnong is made up of 9 suburbs: Braybrook, Footscray, Kingsville, Maidstone, Maribyrnong, Seddon, Tottenham, West Footscray and Yarraville. And the city of Maribyrnong, in my personal opinion, is a pretty great place to work, and you can study and visit. It's really, really great place. So with any organisation, you don't have to look too hard to find areas where you think to yourself, does it have to be this hard, or how can we make better use of technology? I think the key to automation is knowing which processes to automate and which to not. One of the first areas we identified for process improvement began with the compliance team. In particular, the particular process that we looked at related to applying for an extension of time for an infringement. The normal process is that you may get a fine. You may not be able to pay the fine on time. So you can apply for an extension of time by calling our customer service team. They in turn would create a request in our authority system for a compliance officer to action. The compliance officer would then take this request and determine how to process it. In our authority system, the officer needed to change the status of the infringement, provide a reason for the change the date the infringement is due, and create an arrangement schedule. Once that was complete, they were able to close the request, which indicated that the process was finished. All these processes represent a different screen, and in some instances a different module in the system. It all sounds pretty simple. However, when you start to process map each step, you begin to appreciate how much effort and concentration is required to make sure that you're entering the correct data against each request. Usually it would take about 2 to 3 minutes for each request to be processed from start to finish. Given that there would be 15 to 20 requests, we averaged that the process could take up to 45 minutes a day. Doesn't sound like a lot of time. However, you have to consider that it's not just the officer's sole responsibility. They may be interrupted to do other tasks and answer calls. We looked at this process because we could see that it was simple. All the information required to make a decision was found in the request, and the tasks were repeatable. If the process was automated, it would allow the officers to focus their time on other tasks that required more effort or something that was more exciting than just data entry. And it could also offer more accuracy, as an automated process could copy and paste data compared to an officer who would retype the information. If your existing processes are well documented, it is relatively easy to automate them. However, some organisations don't have great documentation. We were no different in this case. That's not to say that the officers didn't know what their role was or they didn't have a process to follow. It just meant that they had to adjust their approach, and we had to adjust our approach and how to gather the information so we could achieve a good outcome. The team at Automation Anywhere have a 5-step approach: discover, define, build, test, and release. In the discovery phase, our job was to figure out which process we were going to document. Once we had our process, we needed to identify how automation was going to play a part. It was important that we had staff that truly understood the process so we could understand why the process existed and if there were any improvements that we could make to it. Before you build and release the automation workflow, you have to understand the current process. In the define phase, we mapped each process visually so we could see the flow of information. It's not enough to write down the steps. Sometimes you need to see the data and how it moves from one stage to another. Once you have your workflow process mapped, it's easy to translate that into an automated process. The software allows you to build the steps required to replace any user involvement. You will build a process that may seem perfect the first time, but as you begin to test, you'll soon realize that you'll have to go back and make changes. That is why in the testing phase, it is important to test the process. Again, the right stakeholders have to be involved so that you can be sure that the requirements are being met, so the workflow can be signed off and you can release the automation to the live environment. You may think that releasing the software is the last stage. Technically it is, but it's always a good idea to monitor how it is performing so you can identify any additional improvements and improve the overall workflow. I've talked about the process, but I haven't talked much about the software. Obviously, we partnered with Automation Anywhere because we identified early on that they are the leaders in this space of automation. Using their methodology, they took the manual process of extending the time for an infringement and automating it using a bot that is scheduled to run every day. It takes approximately 40 seconds for each request for an average of 12 minutes a day. Thanks to the Automation Anywhere, the implementation resulted in eliminating a manual process. You could say that we saved more than half an hour's worth of work for the officer, but if you think about it, we have saved more than that. We've actually saved the officer the whole 45 minutes of time, because that 45 minutes, they don't have to work on the extension of time infringement process. The extra time means they can get more done elsewhere. So how does it work? We have control room installed on one of our servers. It is responsible for storing the bot and the automated workflow process in a repository. It takes the bot and schedules it to run on a client machine. Installed on the client machine is the automation client software. It is responsible for creating and running the bot. The bot can run manually, or as mentioned before, it is run through the control room on a schedule. To create the bot, you need to have a license for the bot creator. You use the software on the client machine to create the workflow and upload it to the control room repository. Once you have created your workflow, you need another license to run the bot through the control room schedule. Sounds a bit complicated, and that's what I thought in the beginning. But once everything is handed over and I started to play with the software, it was quite easy to use. It just follows basic logic. So if you're logical, you can create your own bots. Another advantage with partnering with Automation Anywhere is their online material. I believe that the online training courses are really simple and easy to follow, and they've helped me out quite a bit. Additionally, their service desk is really helpful. I've called them a few times when I've needed help, and the responses have been quick, and they jump on the system and they have a look at the issue and they resolve it pretty quickly. And if you can't figure something out, or if you want to look at some of the other bots that have been created, they have online forums and bots you can download to help you expand on what you've already created. It's really good. So what have we learned through this process? There are some good things and there are some bad things. For one, you have to stay on track. Stick to your process diagrams because there are so many ways to solve a problem with automation. Sometimes there is more than one solution. One person could think of a way to do it, while the other person thinks of another way. Either one could be right, but as long as you stick to the same methods for each step and you stick to the process. But you've got to be open-minded as well. You may also have issues with some legacy systems. Our authority system sometimes uses 4GL programs, which the best way to describe it is like a software box that queries the database. At times, the bot couldn't use a mouse click option to activate a step. So instead, we had to change to a mouse click. We had to change from a mouse click to a keyboard keystroke. If you can use APIs to process your data, it's probably the preferred method. Once your process has been tested, you may discover new opportunities to optimize your workflows. For example, our infringement process would follow a natural order of changing the status, adding a reason for the change, changing the due date, and creating an arrangement schedule. Because you have the advantage of the bot, you can group efficiencies together. We found that by actioning all the status updates first, then all the arrangements and so on, the overall process was more efficient, more accurate, and it reduced the chance of failure. And the last point is, have fun with it. It's a chance to create something really cool that will save you time and money. The applications are endless. So what lies ahead? Yes, we have an automated process, but we need to capitalize on its success. We have a couple of ideas that we've been working on. The first one is our swimming pool register. You are now required by law to notify the council if you own a swimming pool or a spa. To notify council, a user needs to fill out an online application. That form is emailed to the officer who enters that data from a PDF document into our authority database. We have created a bot that takes the PDF form, reads the data from it, and enters it into the register without the need of an officer to intervene. Our second idea is around our name and address register. We have an officer that looks for duplicate records in the system and merges data into a single record. While we are not ready to have the bot merge data automatically, we wanted to read the data from an Excel spreadsheet and merge the records listed. This takes away the mundane part of having to enter and watch the data being merged. Our third idea is just a concept at the moment. What we propose is to have the bot read our database and look for accounts that have overdue payments. Once it has gathered the list of accounts, it will look to notify the parties that their accounts are overdue with either an SMS or an email. The notification will contain a link to our payment site to make it easier to make the payment. That's just a tip of what we'd like to achieve with the bot. I'm sure there are many other applications that we are yet to discover, but that's the real exciting part, and our journey is always evolving. Thanks everyone, that's me, and I'll hand it back over to Fiona.
Thanks, David, so much. So we're going to launch another poll for everyone that's joined with us today, because we want to know what you'd like the next steps to be. So how would you like VIS Global and Automation Anywhere to interact with you after the webinar? Would you like to request a demo, an advisory workshop, assistance with developing use cases, build a pilot, help scale automation, or send more information on RPA and cognitive automation, or thanks very much, I have everything I need for now. So if you could answer those, the poll just while we go through the Q&A, that would be super. And David, the first question is for you, so you have to come back off mute. Beautiful.
Excellent.
David, can you share with the audience today, what are the best practices to get started quickly?
Well, there are a couple of things. Some of the tools you need to get started quickly, you need someone who knows the process really well. Anything that you need to automate, you need to put into a flow chart so you can see how the information flows in between each steps. That's really important, because if you can't see the data and you start building, you know, if you try and start building the bot, then it's just going to take a lot longer. But once you have an understanding of the data, it's so easy to translate that diagram into a bot. So, and you don't have to be too technical to learn how to create a bot as well. I mentioned before, there's also some really good resources online to help you if you're stuck. So if you're logical and you have your process down pat, then you're good to go.
Thank you. Alex, the next question is for you. So what are the common processes that you would recommend starting with?
Right. When you take a journey into automation, the start point is always a tough one. You know, there is a lot of ideation that comes in. There will be a lot of people who will bring in wide varieties of inputs, saying that we will try that, we will do this, we will do that, etc. But the most important thing, as even David mentioned, is to be able to get the start right. And when you are getting that done with your team internally, take the smallest and the simplest steps first. that is when you then get a hang of the system. You get a hang of what the basic processes were. And as David also mentioned, that then you will be able to explore much more. And now you understand the system, you understand the processes well, and now you know how to be able to add more to make it versatile. To be honest, it's not just a single iteration. As I mentioned, in a typical contact center flow maturity curve, you go through that maturity. And it is important to start simple, small, fast, and quick. Thank you.
David, another question for you. Have you analysed and quantified your return on investment?
That is a pretty good question. We have done some analysis of it. The main winner there is the time given back to the officer. I made mention there it's a 45-minute process if they're doing it manually, which is reduced down to 12 minutes by the robot or by the bot. And there are some cost savings there as well. I mean, obviously the officer can go in and do other work that he doesn't have to be stuck 45 minutes doing that one task.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and I think this is the $64 million question. And I don't know if Alex or Vikal would like to answer this. David's already spoken about how the work that they've undertaken with ROI, but in your experience, and your experience is global, what is the best way to measure ROI? Maybe Vikal, you can lead off on that one, yeah?
Sure. Thanks, Fiona. So the ROI, I mean, as David mentioned, I think Alex alluded to as well, it's a combination of things. It's not just in the actual hours you save, it's also in the experience. It's also in the agility with which you're actually able to respond to queries. It's also in the fact that you're delivering a more holistic outcome to a question, to a query, or to an interaction. So I think the ROI is a component of a few things. The absolute tangible component obviously is you save time, you save money, and that's the immediate outcome of it. But the intangible or the less measured part is the customer success and the experience.
So, Fiona, let me add to that. I think the question might be more specific to a contact center, so let me try and put it up front. I like to be direct. I like to be more relevant. I have worked with contact centers for the last 14, 15 years. I know their businesses quite well, so it might be appropriate for me to be able to answer that well. It's very important to understand that this is an assistant to a agent, which means that all his work, which he himself doesn't like to do it quite very easily, are the ones that are taken off. This ROI typically is about 20% that we have taken as an average based on all the ones that we did it across globally. We did a survey last year. But if you remember one of the slides that I showed, ROI in typical terms on just a bare minimum value is about 20 to 30%, but the impact is extensively high. Because that gives motivation to the individuals. It gives higher set of customer satisfaction. You are able to get your process right every time. And you're able to ensure that everybody is doing the way that it is complied for your organization and all the compliances that you're written. And ROI, in absolute terms, you will be able to see about 20 to 30% in a contact center. But in terms of a holistic view, it's much greater than that.
Well, thank you very much. That's a great suggestions in terms of approach. So with that, we're actually over time. Thank you so much for the richness of what you shared today and sharing, David, your use case and experience as a practitioner. To Vikal, Alex and David, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to everyone that joined us today, irrespective of where you are in the world. As you know, we are going to be sending out a recording of the webinar today. With that, I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you might be. And thank you to VIS Global and Automation Anywhere and Maribyrnong Council as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a fabulous day.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Fiona,
everyone.
and everyone who attended.